If I'm a born-again, spirit-filled believer in Messiah Yeshua, why would I be needing to be sprinkled with the water from the ashes of the red heifer? This is Barry Phillips with 10-Minute Torah, Day 2 of Chukat. And we are still in Numbers, or Bamidbar, chapter 19. Let's go down to verse number 11. He who touches the dead of any human being is unclean for 7 days. He is to cleanse himself with the water on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he is clean. But if he does not cleanse himself on the 3rd day, then on the 7th day he is not clean. So you need to be sprinkled twice. Anyone who touches the dead of a human being and does not cleanse himself defiles the dwelling place of Yahweh, and that being shall be cut off from Israel. He is unclean, for the water for uncleanness was not sprinkled on him. His uncleanness is still upon him. Let's be a little bit on the practical part here. At the time that this is given to us, in the timeline of things, last week when we were studying Korah, we were still in the 2nd year from the original Exodus, the early part perhaps of that 2nd year. 1 year had elapsed, the tabernacle had been built, Torah had been given, tribes been established in their place. They come to the land, they slandered the land, refused to go into the land. The verdict was given, you're going to walk in the wilderness. And until this generation dies, Korach's rebellion and all of those have taken place. Between that event and where we are now, some 39 years have elapsed, at least in the timeline of things. While these directions may have been given earlier, they are put here for us to understand that the 2nd generation is now the focus of everything that is being stated. The 1st generation has been year after year passing away. So many of the people, if not all, have been in some way touched by the death of a relative, a parent, grandparent, aunts, uncles, etc. And they are tainted or ritually defiled. They're not sinning, they're ritually defiled by death. Death is a natural part of life, in a manner of speaking. Unless Messiah returns in our lifetime, many of us are going to pass from this earth. That's life. However, those who are left to deal in the aftermath, to pick up the pieces, to continue on, not only is it the dealing of the dead body, the disposing of the body and its flesh, but there is the grieving part, and there is the emotional turmoil, and there is the whole relational wreckages that can come because someone passing. I've seen many a wedding and many a funeral, and the best of families will come together. The worst of families will fight. And sometimes even those somewhere in between the two will fight or cause disruption or have issues. Therefore, there needs to be some cleansing. There needs to be more than just the closure of burying the body and having a funeral service. There needs to be the relief of the effects of the death. And so just like sin doesn't pass away because of the passage of time without repentance, neither does the defilement of death. Time does help, but the effects of death itself, especially if it's ritual uncleanness, it doesn't just pass away. It needs to be dealt with. So we have things like sin and death and curses, generational curses, sicknesses, adversarial attacks, all of our own personal weaknesses, all of these things that we read about in the Torah, they're doing something in common. They're pointing to the Messiah, to Yeshua, the deliverer, and saying, we need you. We need you to give us that sense of closure, that sense of deliverance, that That line that we cross, that door that we walk through to where we realize it's off of me. I'm free. For a prisoner that is in shackles, the hearing of the key turning the lock and the shackles falling off and hitting the floor, that's one thing. But when they can walk out into the sunlight and realize these things are not on me, at some point there's this breakthrough where they realize I'm no longer in shackles. Spiritually, we need the same experience. The red heifer is there to help us. Now, much has been said in recent months in particular about red heifers, because there are a few, 2 or 3 at this point that I understand, in the land of Israel that may qualify for this ritual. If and when that does take place, you can expect that the world is going to pay attention. The Arab world will be heightened in their anxieties. Some have even alluded to the fact that the red heifers being in Israel was part of the impetus of the October 7th massacre. I don't know that they needed that reason. Demons don't need justification for what they do. They just do. I'll leave that at there. So the understanding is then that we have this ritual. And part of it is to take cedar and hyssop and scarlet and throw it into the fire when the animal is burning. Out of this ashes, water is poured through it, and it renders into then a cleansing agent, even a physical cleansing agent. Cedar oil is fragrant, but it's also a skin irritant, a very strong astringent, if you will, and it causes you to rub. It's fungicidal. Or fungicide. It's a fungicide, and it's also antibacterial. Hyssop oil is also very fragrant. It's an astringent. It's antiviral. It's an antiseptic. It's a disinfectant. And then you render that through animal fats and ashes, and you come up with a potassium carbonate that is used to make soap, which would have been a very fragrant soap. And that's not to say that the water was soapy. We don't know what that water may have felt like or the consistency of it. Nevertheless, it had some sense of cleansing, perhaps, which leaves us with the scarlet. And I've been pondering on that. And the first thing I can think of is the scarlet cord that was let down at a Rahab's window when Israel went in to take the land. And again, I was pondering, okay, was this just a sign, a symbol, exactly what? And many have linked that to Messiah, the shedding of his blood, etc. And I can see that. But to me, it was the sign of this house is to be delivered. We are to be spared the death sentence that is coming on the rest of the city. And perhaps that's part of what it was. You may have other ideas. I'd love to hear what your ideas are. But all of these things together, as they produce these waters, whether the water purified physically the flesh or not, it did something for the mind. Many years ago, a rabbinical teaching was heard, and it was talking about that when you need to cleanse your mind has just been in the wrong place. It's been frustrated. It's been lured. It's been drawn aside into anger and all things negative. Go to running water in your sink and just watch the water run over your hands. And there's something about the cleansing of your hands that resets the mind. Don't know how to explain that, but I've done it and it does work. It is the ritual of closing, the experience of closure. And we need that. We need that mark of deliverance. The red heifer typifies Yeshua, who is the deliverer, who is our closure. And may he bring about that opportunity for us today. A little more on this tomorrow. Until then, shalom.